everyone, and welcome back to My Brain is a Wonderland, the podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. You're here with your host today, Emily, and today I am going to be starting a new series. I just completed 2 episodes ago, the Unmasking Autism series. And that was a 4-episode series based on the book Unmasking Autism by Dr. Devon Price. And each episode basically went through a set of female autistic traits based on if they were social, behavioral, psychological, and I can't remember the 4th one. And what it seemed like is I got a really big uptick in listeners when I posted those episodes. I think it was a couple of reasons. I think the fact that it had autism in the title of the episodes, it was easier for you guys to find if you're a new listener. And the other thing, I think, is that you seem to want to hear more about symptoms, what people say about symptoms, what are the symptoms, how do I experience symptoms, a little more symptom heavy than maybe story heavy, or maybe symptom heavy with the stories on the back end. So what I did is I'm a big fan of this website, attitudemag.com, and it's basically a magazine for people who, I guess it's attitude ADD. It was for ADD, expanded to ADD, ADHD. It sounds like maybe they were an actual physical magazine at some point, but they're a blog. Very robust content. They have a lot of stuff on there. And they talk about ADHD in women, and they have a section on their website about the different symptoms. And they actually have 4 divided sections about female ADHD traits, ones that are seen more commonly in women than in men. So I thought it would be a good idea to do 4 episodes called Unmasking ADHD and base them off of these symptoms that they're describing on attitudemag.com. So this episode is going to be about social deficits, which off the bat, I don't like the word deficit. I'll tell you right now. I don't think it's an appropriate word. It puts it into the negative and like things you don't have versus like things that maybe you struggle with or that you do have, but there's things getting in the way. I don't know. I just don't like that word deficits, but that's what they call it, is social deficits. The 2nd episode is going to be on hypersensitivities. The 3rd episode is going to be on comorbidities, and the 4th episode is going to be on impulsivity. Okay, so let's get started. There are actually only 3 kind of descriptions or traits or symptoms described under social deficits. So I'm going to go through them and just kind of talk about if I agree with that and if I experience that. So the first one is, women are often overwhelmed with the demands of relationships and tend to have fewer meaningful relationships as a result. They rarely initiate relationships and have trouble maintaining them. Isolation protects from discomfort and confusion. Okay, let's take this step by step because there were kind of a few different points in those few sentences. So women are often overwhelmed with the demands of relationships. Absolutely true. I struggle being close with particularly women because they seem to be so social focused. And this is, I don't know if these women are neurotypical or neurodivergent or not, but I'm thinking of a particular friend of mine that I wouldn't even say, she's not a close friend, she's barely a friend, she's someone my husband worked with, and I love her, and I wish we could be closer, and I felt her trying to get closer, but I do struggle with the demands of that. I remember when we were kind of in a space where I could feel she was trying to get closer to me, and she started sending me TikTok videos like multiple times a day. And I said to my husband, am I supposed to comment every time? Am I supposed to send a video back? If I don't comment, is that like dead air and I didn't care? It just seemed like a lot. And she'll also do this thing, which I don't think is women necessarily. I think it's just like neurotypical people. she'll do this thing where she'll just say, hey, do you want to come out for a party? I'm having a huge shindig, and it's 2 hours from now or something. Like, she just pulls up, like, the craziest stuff, and I can't keep up with it. And I don't think she expects a lot from me and feels, like, angry that I'm not, holding up my side of the bargain. I think what it is that she thinks when I don't respond to these things, when I say, no, you gave, no parentheses, you gave us 2 hours notice, I'm not fucking coming. Oh, excuse me. Oops. I think she takes that as a rejection and then backs off of contacting me. Me and my husband have discussed this in the past because we're both a little bit introverted. I'm neurodivergent. My husband may be neurodivergent. We're kind of still in the mix trying to find that out. But that if you get asked, let's say, probably honestly max twice, if you have kind of a friend that's on the cusp of being a good friend and they're inviting you to things, if they invite you to something and you say no, and they invite you again to something else and you say no, they're probably going to stop inviting you to stuff. And it's not that they don't want you there, but they kind of get into this, well, you're not there. I forget you because you're not there. That's an aspect of it. But also, you always say no, so I'm just not going to invite you anymore. So you really have to work on saying yes, especially at the beginning of a relationship with a friend. Working on saying yes the first few times and actually going and doing the thing that maybe you don't want to do. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but if you want to be friends with this person, you probably do need to do that. And I get overwhelmed with that aspect of having to see someone constantly to maintain this friendship. I like the sounds of those friendships where you were friends as kids or in college, you got super close, and now all you have to do is check in once a year. Or like when you get back together, it seems like no time has passed, right? I don't have those friends anymore. I have had those friends, and it's gotten to the point, there are a couple of friends that I could check in with, go back to England and be like, hey man, let's hang out. And they'd be like, great. But that's going to be the extent of it. After that meeting, we're not going to have a friendship where we're hanging out all the time. It's just going to be that super distant, like we check in on Instagram every once in a while, we check in on text, and then we see each other every few years maybe, or once a decade. I mean, literally. And that sounds preferable to me. I go back and forth. I feel like I want more friends, people who I can rely on, people who I can hang out with, people who I can just kick back with, have a drink, play a game, watch a movie, hang out, be comfortable. So it's not like you're showing up to these events at bars where you don't know anybody. You can just show up and be like, hey man, we know each other, it's cool. But the amount of work it takes to get there is so much. And I think I've spoken about this in the past. The best way I've found to make friends in adulthood is people you work with. You're with them all day. You spend a lot of hours with them. It takes hours to make a friend. So kind of working with them day after day after day. Then all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but you're like, you want to get lunch? Oh, I'm getting lunch. Let's get lunch. And then it progresses to, you want to get drinks after work? Oh, you want to come with me to this thing? Like, that's how it works. I'm in actually an interesting position right now because I'm hybrid work from home. That's permanent. It's not a COVID thing. So I work from home at least 2 days a week, which means because everyone at my office works from home 2 days a week, I could go weeks without seeing somebody. Because our schedules don't cross, they take PTO, they have time off, it's not the same when you're in the thick of it. When I worked in nonprofits, I was working with people sometimes 6 days a week, in the trenches. And that's how you get to know people really closely. And so that's my preferred way. But then what I've also found is that when you leave that job, you have to start engaging in those behaviors that I find overwhelming. The texting them constantly. Not constantly, but at least once a month. I think if you live in the same town, and you want to hang out, once a month, I guess. I don't know. An email sounds really formal, even though email's really informal now. I think to email someone and say, hey, do you want to hang out? That's weird. I think a text is the way to go. But then you have to start engaging in those behaviors. And I've lost 2 of my closest friends over the last 3 years that I've had in the town I moved to. I moved here in November 2019. So that was 4 years ago. Crap, wow. And I gained super close friendships in the first 2 years, left the job, and have lost those friendships now. They don't respond to texts. I think they're struggling with similar issues, that they have to keep up with this relationship. When you work together, it's so much easier. So that's my recommendation, honestly. If you're struggling, you need to be tapping into your work network. And if that is like dumpster fire and you don't want to be friends with anyone at work, I recommend that you go and start a hobby where you're going like twice a week to an art studio or something like that. It's really, or like dance classes. That's my recommendation there. And yeah, the follow-up to that was, and tend to have fewer meaningful relationships as a result. I mean, I think I just said that over the last 4 years, I've gotten 2 meaningful relationships, and I've lost both of them. And I think, to me, 2 in 4 years seems normal. Like, can you have meaningful relationships with everyone at work? I don't know. I mean, I have other meaningful relationships, but I have meaningful relationships in different ways. Like, we connect over work. We connect when I travel for work. I see you very briefly. You're in another state. Things like that. But people who are in my town, who I've connected with, 2 of them. And to me, that seems normal in 4 years. Is that normal? I don't know. Quote unquote normal? I don't know. That seems like more than 2. Okay, I don't know how to manage that, so. All right, and the next part of that section is they rarely initiate friendships. That is absolutely true. I spoke on a previous episode about how there is a woman at work, and I found out she's introverted, but she doesn't come across that way, and I think that's how I come across, is like, I'm funny, I'm quirky, but actually I'm super shy. And she has been maybe 3 times, and I've known her for 3 years now, or 2 years, working at this job, and she has maybe 3 times been like, we need to get a drink. We need to get a drink. And I said on a previous episode, okay, what do I do with that in the moment? Because usually I say, yeah, we definitely do. Then is that my job to follow up? Is that my job to say, hey, you know about that drink? Let's do it. And if it is, when do I do that? I mean, I feel like a woman dating in the 90s, Is he not that into me? I don't know what to do. If I text her a day later, a week later, if I tell her right then when she says, we should get a drink, and I go, oh, you free tonight? Is that too much? Is that too soon? And I've misread it before. I said this, I think, on the same episode, that there was someone at a previous job. We were hanging out. It was COVID. We spent hours together at work. There was nothing to do, so we would just hang out for literally hours in 2020 for like 6 months, more than that maybe, just hours. And a new pier was opening in town, and she was talking about how she wanted to go there and hang out and go, and I said, oh, I'd love to go with you. And she super backtracked in the moment. It was so obvious in that moment that she was like, ugh, And I don't know that it was necessarily she didn't want to go with me. It could have been that she has social anxiety. I'm just not sure. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't want to get in that position again, because I told my husband in that moment I was feeling really like, okay, she's given the signal. She's telling me she wants to go. We've been hanging out for months. We've been connecting. We talked about neurodivergency. She thought maybe she had ADHD. I was about to get diagnosed. And she rejected me. I mean, it was so clear. She was like, I don't want to do that. And so I don't know. And the follow-up is they rarely initiate friendships and have a trouble maintaining them. I think I've spoken to that already. Absolutely. I will literally just forget to text you. I don't know if I've spoken about this before, but I, for a year, maybe longer, thought that I had sent a message to a previous coworker that I'd super bonded with. It was one of the two people that I got close to in the last 4 years. And I'd left the job, and we met up one time after I left, and then kind of dropped off on the text messages. Like I said, it's very difficult. And I just felt, a little bit hurt, and a little bit like, I'm not sure where to go from here. She never responded. And then she actually messaged me a couple of months ago, to say she was leaving that job and she wanted to get together. And I looked back at our messages, and actually I left her on red a year and a half ago. I was sitting here in my dilly-dally thinking, man, I don't know if she wants to hang out. Like, she didn't message me back. And I look back on the message, and the last message is from her. I left her hanging. I did that. And so with maintaining friendships, it's not even like that I don't want to sometimes. I will just forget you. And I've done it prior to that too. Set up meetings, hangouts with people, and they've messaged me and said, hey, are you coming? And I'm a 2-hour, train ride away or what. And I'm like, and then I just flake and ignore them, and we never talk ever again because it's so freaking embarrassing. And that's the reality of living with ADHD. And I don't think that's necessarily a female trait. I'm wondering if it's that women in general maintain relationships in a more social way than men. And so women who have ADHD struggle more with friendships because mostly you're trying to connect with women. I'm not really sure about that. And then the last part of this section is isolation protects from discomfort and confusion. Oh yeah. I love to be isolated. I love to not have to deal with this stuff. Every once in a while, I'm like, man, I'd love to see someone else's face other than my husband's, or my sister-in-law, or my dog's. But honestly, I just don't even want to deal with it. Most of the time. Most of the time, I am happy. It's getting cool to cold here in Florida right now. It's getting darker earlier, and I'm just happy to be snuggling on my sectional with my dogs, with my husband, eating mac and cheese, watching a movie, just chilling out. And these relationship starters and maintaining these, it brings me so much stress that it's unreal. And like I said, the only way I've really found it not to be as stressful is to do it through work. And even through work, it usually takes me about 8 to 12 months of working with someone, maybe 3 to 6 if we're in the trenches hard, to get to a space where I'm like, hey, so here's what's going on in my life, The woman I talked about who I left her on red, actually, I only knew her for 8 months while we were working together, but her dad also died when she was 4 years old. And I think she has either diagnosed, not out, or undiagnosed ADHD, so I bonded with her super quickly. And we worked at a nonprofit in the trenches, doing summer school with kids. It was just freaking awful. So that's how that happened. All right, number 2. They often struggle with rejection sensitivity, an intense emotional response to real or perceived rejection, which can make social interaction a potential source of pain. Yes, yeppity yep, yes. I'm actually, if you're following me on Instagram or TikTok, which if you're not, you should be, it's My Brain is a Wonderland on Instagram and TikTok. I'm doing a little short series on rejection-sensitive dysphoria right now. I know I absolutely suffer from it, and so many people do. It's basically where if you get rejected or you feel like certain behaviors from other people are rejecting you, you react very harshly, very intensely. Someone could say, I could say to somebody, hey, do you want to go get Chipotle? And they'll say, nah, I'm good. And you could spiral from that. Spiral about, do they hate me? Do they, if it's a boyfriend or girlfriend, Is the relationship over? They don't like me? I mean, you could just spiral. And that's what I'm talking about with that girl, right? That woman who had given all the indicators in my mind that she wanted to hang out. We'd been hanging out. We were connecting. She talked about a place she wanted to go that was local. And I thought I was like, in the bag, baby. Like, this is a go. It's a green light. And I said, let's hang out. And she clearly didn't want to. And that has made me, I mean, I'm talking about it now. This happened probably in 2020 or 2021, the beginning of. And it made me so gun shy now because I was so sure that I knew what she wanted. I was so sure that she was into us hanging out at that place. And I was wrong. And the other thing is that, man, can I be the main character in my life all the time? I mean, because I am the main character in my life all the time. It's all about me. And I struggle to not feel that way sometimes. So this woman may have been dealing with the fact that she'd already agreed to go with someone alone. She could be dealing with the fact that maybe she was not being truthful, that she was just talking about wanting to go to this place, but she didn't really want to. Like, maybe there was stuff that I'm not privy to that isn't related to me and our interaction that affected that rejection. But in the moment and often after that, it's really hard to see that it's not you most of the time. Honestly, it's not you most of the time. Because think about when you do it. When you say to somebody, no, I don't want to. It's not because of them. It's not because you hate that person. It's because you don't want to eat food you've never had. It's stressful to go to a social situation. Whatever. So I try to take a step back, but that's sometimes not easy. It's been easier lately because I'm recognizing this stuff. And it's funny, they say in this thing, a response to real or perceived rejection. I think I struggle between recognizing the two. Did this person, I mean, you could maybe throw me down the stairs and punch me in the face and I'd be like, well, maybe they're struggling. Like, I don't know. It's a struggle for me to recognize real and perceived rejection when it's my emotions getting in the way, or, when that person has said, like, no, leave me alone. And no one will ever say that. Like, you'd have to be stalking someone for someone to be like, leave me alone. So, and that's what I need. I need someone to say, hey, I don't want to be friends with you. I don't want to hang out with you. Or I don't want to do that, for whatever reason. But that doesn't happen. And the last part of it was, and make social interaction a potential source of pain. Absolutely agree with that. And this is something that, I don't know if it's been studied in ADHD, but it has in autism, that when you feel mental pain or things that you don't like, it becomes physical pain. So I grew up having earaches all the time. All the time. My, inner ear, just it was horrible. And I've now realized, from just when they come up, it is an earache from hypersensitivity to sound is usually what it is. So if there's background noise, I will get an earache. There's something, like you're on a plane, that sound, which I wear earplugs now to block that out, I'll get an earache. That should not cause you physical pain. In terms of the loop of how pain works, how the medical society industry thinks of how it works and knows how it works scientifically, that should not cause you pain. But in neurodivergent people, literally it feels like an attack on your senses. And so I will get earaches from sounds that wouldn't cause neurotypical people an earache. Because it's not loud, it's just super frustrating. And I'll, if the radio is on, I'll get an earache. And it's real. It's a physical, real pain. I used to go to the doctor all the time for it. And then because I would poke in my ear and all this kind of stuff, I would get ear infections, So this kind of potential source of pain, it can become a real pain, a real physical pain from these things, even though they start as like emotional pains. And then the third and final section of this social deficit section, which I'm going to be a little bit vague about, I'm going to read it though, says, they are more likely to engage in risky sexual behaviors compared to women without ADHD. One theory for this is early recognition of sexuality as a shortcut to social acceptance. It's common to find a history of early initiation of sexual activity, early intercourse, more sexual partners, more casual sex, less protected sex, more sexually transmitted infections, and more unplanned pregnancies in women with ADHD. While common, these experiences are aspects of ADHD that elicit shame. I'm going to be a little bit vague because I have a job and I'm not getting super nitty-gritty into the sexual aspect, but I have engaged in risky sexual behaviors that I have regretted and felt shame in afterwards. That being said, with regards to the early aspect, it's like early this, sexual activities quick. I think because of my autism, rewind. I think a lot of this, in my opinion, is from impulsivity, right? Impulsive, you do these things, you're seeking dopamine. But because of my autism, this comorbidity, it kind of curbed that. I actually lost my virginity late in life. I was in my 20s. I did not like to get close to people. The idea of, like, getting close to a boy, I'm bisexual, but I didn't really know that when I was kind of engaging in stuff as a teenager or trying to engage because I didn't engage. So it was boys. And I was like, I don't want to kiss you. I don't want to touch you. Like, we're not gonna have sex because that's stupid. Like, I was like so anxious about getting pregnant, getting an STD, giving it up too early, giving it to a guy who was an idiot, like, who treated me like crap. Like, I actually didn't go the whole hog, and I think it's because my autism just sucked me back. Really did. I really struggle with interacting with people, even just being physically open. I don't like to be naked around people. I don't even like to just expose my body with clothes on. I've always been that way. I feel open and vulnerable, not open, I feel scared and vulnerable when I'm, like, emotionally or physically naked or in a large space where I feel open, and I don't know, I really think my autism kind of sunk that. Kind of said, you don't communicate well with people, you don't want to be touched, you don't like kissing, ew. And I love kissing now. I mean, I really do. It's like sensory heaven. But back then, and even now, there's certain times where I don't want to do this stuff, But if you said to me, like, oh, we're going to have sex unprotected, I'm more than likely going to be like, no, you're not even coming close to me. So I think what protected me from that in the end is the fact that I'm autistic. But, as I said, vaguely, I have engaged in risky sexual behaviors once I entered my 20s and 30s. And impulsivity is a huge issue for me. And that's actually it's going to be the fourth of these episodes for this series of ADHD Unmasked, so stick around for that. But it sounds like, of all the three things I mentioned, it's a yes, and a more of a yes. So, if you're connecting with any of this, if this feels like you, feel free to email me. It's mybrainisa@gmail.com. Please leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening. My Spotify is sitting at the same. I got one in the last couple of weeks, and I haven't checked my Apple, but I'd love for you guys to leave a review if you're enjoying this. I just want to reach more people. I want to get this info out to more people and connect with more people. And I spoke about this on, I think, the last podcast. I am going to take a break at the end of December, around January, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. I might just splice some episodes together so you have something to listen to. But I'm going to do these 4 episodes. Here's the plan. These 4 episodes for this series. And I'm also going to do a Christmas holiday schmoliday episode. I didn't want to do a Thanksgiving one because honestly my Thanksgiving was really low-key and easy this year, but I did want to talk about my Christmas because I'm actually not going to family for Christmas this year, and I wanted to talk about that and talk about boundaries and how you can set more boundaries so that you can live a happier, chiller life. So thank you for listening, everybody, and I will see you on the next episode of My Brain is a Wonderland Season 2 for the second episode of Unmasking ADHD. Bye-bye.